Episode 7 begins with the Holograms shooting a video with their best friend, Vivian Montgomery, aka Video, with It's Only Me and the Music from last season. So after the video was finished, Vivian, or Video for short, had asked her friends if they could do a favor for her. So Video explained to Jim that since Father's Day is coming up, the problem is she doesn't have a present to give to her father, which is her father John, who we're about to meet later. So Rhea has a suggestion. What if we can make a video for your father? Now Jim, who agrees with Rhea, says that's a splendid idea. So Jim suggested that they should do the music while Video handles the video herself. And as you can see, Kimber is feeling completely miserable. Ever since both her and her sister's father had passed away since last season, she just hasn't been the same since. So Jim suggested to the girls to get everybody's home videos of their own dads and then just meet back at Starlight Mansion. So speaking of which, on the way there, Jericho wants to know what was wrong with Kimber. Well, if you ask me, Kimber says, I think this is a very bad idea. Now don't get it wrong, Kimber says, it had nothing to do with our musical careers whatsoever. So finally, the Benton sisters had arrived at Starlight Mansion, and that's when Jericho asked Kimber a question. Don't you think you're acting a little selfish just a bit? Video is our friend after all, and we deserve some of her support in any way, Jericho said. And so after both of the women went inside Starlight Mansion, that's when Jericho said, listen to me, there's some old movies upstairs in the attic. Just bring them down to the living room, okay? So Kimber went upstairs to the attic of Starlight Mansion, and there, Kimber went through all the boxes that both her and Jericho's late dad used to have, like an old trophy, for instance. That's the first thing that Kimber see when she opened a box. The next thing she sees was a bathrobe that both Jericho and Kimber's late father had once upon a time. So, during the Something Missing in My Life song from episode 10 in last season, that's when Kimber started looking at the photo album that belonged to both Jericho and Kimber's late father, with the initials EB on the front of the book. What Kimber did is that after looking at the picture of herself and her late dad, and of course her sister's late dad too, then she looks herself in the mirror. Next thing you know, old memories of both Kimber and her late dad, and let's not forget her sister's late dad, started washing over Kimber. It's when she was a child, that's when both her and her sister's late dad used to take Kimber swimming once upon a time. The next flashback we see is teenage Kimber when she got older, when she was playing her guitar in the living room for both her and her sister's late dad, while he was sitting in a chair. After Kimber's flashbacks ended, the last thing she sees was a picture of herself when she was very young, and also Kimber and her sister's late dad in a photo album that she had opened recently. The last thing we see is Kimber's tear touching the picture at the same time. So when the song came to an end, the last thing we see is Kimber holding both her and her sister's late father's bathrobe close to her chest. And when Kimber heard her sister's voice asking, have you found the old movies yet? Not only did Kimber say that she found them, but her sister says, hurry up. Video and our friends are downstairs right this minute. I'll be right down, Kimber said. And luckily, she found the old movies of both her and her sister's late dad. So now that everybody's in the living room, including their best friend Video, or Vivian for short, that's Rhea setting up the projection screen, while Jerka sets up the projector. So Video wants to know from the holograms if they can attend the Father's Day banquet that's coming up a little later. Then Video said even better, it's going to be located in Mulberry, Florida, where she grows up. Just when Jericho was about to start the movie projector, she said, someone hit the lights. I'll get him, Kimber says, since I'm going to be leaving anyway. How come? Jericho asked. Aren't you going to stay? Well, I got better things to do to occupy my mind, Kimber said. How about writing the song for the Father's Day banquet? And if you want to, you can start right this minute, because we're going to need it when we arrive at Video's hometown later. So after Kimber shuts out the lights, Shayna wants to know what was up with her because she sensed that something must be off with her. Kimber, that is. So Jericho went ahead and started the projector. The first thing that she and the rest of the holograms, Sheena, Asha, Rhea, and of course their best friend Video, or Vivian for short, saw was both Jericho and Kimber's late father was flying a kite for his two daughters. The next image of the home movie that everyone saw was when at the time that the Benton sisters were having a picnic with their late father. But what Kimber's friends, including her sister and Video, were not aware is that Kimber just took a peek at one of the old home movies at the time when both her and her sister's late father was still alive. And she sees herself playing the guitar on a couch in the living room. So in Shayna's case, she had been right that something was off with Kimber. Ever since she and her sister had both lost their father since last season, Kimber just hasn't been the same. She's been inconsolably devastated. So in other words, she felt hopeless, lost, and most of all, completely miserable. So meanwhile, at the Gabor estate in Harvey's room, at least Bissett still has her father Harvey. So when her father didn't pay attention to Pizzazz, he says, "Oh, what is it that you want from me?" "Well, as I said to you before," Pizzazz says, "I wanted to know what kind of present you'll be getting on Father's Day." "Well," Harvey says, "I can't think of anything right now. There was a guy that wanted Arabian horses and they need to be taken care of right away. And it has to be reviewed the very next day. And it has to be done right after I do these reports," Harvey said. So Harvey agrees for his daughter to buy him something for Father's Day. And he says, "But as long as it's not too expensive, I do have money, you know." "Well, true," Possess says, "but you're forgetting one thing. I am a musician after all, so I have my own money to spend." And she's not kidding. And so she left Harvey's room. So after Possess left her father's room, she joined up with her bandmates, and let's not forget Clash, Video's cousin. And as you may have guessed it, Possess is so upset that she said, and I quote, that her father just drives her crazy sometimes. So Clash has a suggestion for Pizzazz and including her friends to say, "Listen, since the Father's Day banquet's coming up later, why don't we go to Mulberry where I grow up?" And let's not forget about her cousin Video. She grows up there too. But Pizzazz dismisses that idea and says nobody in Mulberry even cares about their families, especially your own father. "Don't be ridiculous," Clash said. "My father does care. You'll see." So after Clash made her case with Possess and her bandmates that her father does adore her a lot, and Possess says, "Really? Is that a fact? Well, let's go see your father." And so that's what the Misfits and Clash did. So meanwhile in Mulberry, Florida, by the time that the Misfits arrived, they went right in front of Clash's father's house. Now her father's name is Buzz, and he's also John's brother. So when Buzz comes out of his house to greet with his daughter Clash and also John's niece, and of course Video's cousin, Pizzazz, Roxy, Stormer, and Jetta just couldn't believe what they'd just seen. They were in shock. Pizzazz says, "Well, I'll be. Buzz, who's Clash's father, does adore her. But just two houses away, Clash's cousin Video, or Vivian for short, also went to visit her parents at their house. Oh, let's not forget, Buzz is also Video's uncle, since he lives two houses away. So, the first thing that Video did was to greet her father John and her mother at their house. So when Pizzazz, the Misfits, along with Clash, and of course Clash's father Buzz saw Video pulling up at her house to greet with her father John and also her mother, Pizzazz says, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking? I think we should go visit in a neighborly way." And so that's what the Misfits did, and along with Video's Uncle Buzz. So everyone went two houses down. Pizzazz, her bandmates, Clash, her father Buzz, Clash's father, of course, and also John's brother, went to visit Video, who's Clash's cousin, and of course John, who's Clash's uncle. And that's when Buzz was glad to see his brother. You can tell that Vivian, or Video for short, is not exactly happy about her cousin's visit, and especially her uncle Buzz, and course, Clash's friends, the Misfits. So Buzz wants to know from Video's mother, so what's for dinner? So everyone, Buzz, who's John's brother, along with Buzz's daughter Clash and Video's cousin, and of course Clash's friends. And that's when Video told her cousin, "You better not be making trouble around here." Of course, Possess just cuts off Video and says, "Don't be ridiculous." So everybody went to have dinner at John's house. So now that everybody's finished eating, that's when Clash says, "I know. Why don't we see each other's home videos while we're here?" Buzz, who's Clash's father and also John's brother, says, "Oh, that's a good idea." So when Buzz made a suggestion to his brother John, and that's when John reluctantly agreed and says, "Okay." So everybody went to the living room to see Clash's old movies, and let's not forget Video, or Vivian for short. So now that everyone's in the living room, including Video's mother, who just brought a bowl of popcorn, everybody went to see the old movies of both Clash and, of course, her cousin Video. The first thing they see was Clash when she was just a baby, and of course, Video, or Vivian for short, who's only 2 years old. Now, there's a 2 year difference, by the way. So after Buzz got a compliment from his brother John when John said, and I quote, that Clash takes after you. The next video that everybody saw is that when Video turned 10 years old, and it was on her birthday, is that when at the time she had her first camera, and when Clash, when she was only 8 years old, had her first instrument, which are the cymbals at the time. It was after that scene that Video made a snide remark to say, "Well, the only way that Clash gets attention by is if she hurts someone for it." Well, that did it. That causes Clash to dump popcorn all over Video. However, Video does not like it one bit, and she tries to go after her cousin, but before she could do anything about it, Jetta took the chair underneath Video. Well, that causes John to tell his brother and everybody that, "I think it's time that all of you left." "Much obliged," Bud said, "and I hope there are no hard feelings for you, John," he tells his brother and also Clash's uncle. So everyone left John's house, except for Video, who stays with her parents, of course. But before Buzz left, he made a snide remark to his brother, which John doesn't agree with. So after Buzz left, that's when he looked at his daughter and then apologized and says, "I ought to pop him one if I had the chance." So Video not only forgives her father John and said, "Fighting never solves anything, in my opinion." So Video tells her father John the good news that during a banquet later on that day, John, rest assured, according to his daughter Video, is going to get the best present that he ever had. Meanwhile, as Starlight mentioned in Kimber's upstairs bedroom, so when her sister Jerica comes in, she told Kimber, "We need to talk." "Must we have to?" Kimber asked. "Well, yes, we do." So what Jerica wants to know from her sister, has she come up with a song for Video's father yet? Kimber not only told her sister no, but she said, and I quote, that "I'm not writing it." "Why not?" Jerica asked. "How come? We promised our friend Video, after all, that we're going to be performing it." However, Kimber told her sister that she doesn't even remember making such promise, especially to her friend Video. "Please," Jerica said to Kimber, but Kimber told her sister by claiming a case that she's not inspired. So Kimber told her sister before her sister left the room by saying, I quote, "I'm not going to write that song, and that's final, and I probably never will, ever again." So after that, her sister left the room. So the very next morning, you know the saying of desperate times come for desperate measures? So Jerica decided to do something desperate with her sister Kimber to get her inspired. So what did she and her friends do? They decided to take her to Christie's stables. Sheena tries to cheer up her friend the best way she knew how, but Kimber said that she's not amused about it. Meanwhile, in Mulberry, Florida, Video does what she knows best, filming documentaries on her video camera, and that's when a boy approached her to ask her a question. "What's all this for?" the boy asked. "Well, I cannot tell you right now. It's a surprise, but I can promise you that you will see it right before I leave." So the boy agrees. Back with the Misfits in class, now they can tell that they are extremely bored. So Pizzazz said in her case, well, let's blow this town. So speaking of which, we go into a song montage by the Misfits itself. It was during the entire song that the Misfits, including Clash, went all over Mulberry, from the gas station to the bowling alley to the pool hall, until finally, when the song came to an end, that's when they stopped in front of Video, who's talking to everyone that had surrounded her. And you can tell that the Misfits are not exactly happy about it, since Video has been talking to everyone how she knows Jim and that she'll be coming later and etc. And that's when told everyone, listen, don't take it wrong. I appreciate your support, but I got a deadline to do. But then suddenly, out of nowhere, everyone just heard Clash's voice, especially in front of her cousin, to tell everyone, and I quote, that her cousin Video's a fake. So the Mulberry citizen wanted to know from Clash, what do you mean a fake? And Clash says, well, what I meant to say is simply this. Video doesn't know Jim. Then Video told Clash, and I quote, that that's not true. You know better than that. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, Clash explains, Video's not the only person that's with celebrities. I too happen to have celebrities myself. Meet the Misfits, and everybody went around the Misfits. Of course, the female citizen was more than happy to get Possess's autograph on her arm, of course. Meanwhile, the same young boy who wanted to see the video later was asking Video if he can have a picture taken with the Misfits, and so Video agrees. In the meantime, John Montgomery was busy talking to his brother Buzz, Buzz being Clash's father and Video's uncle. So John was asking his brother to apologize to his daughter Video, meaning Buzz's niece, but Buzz brushed it off by saying, don't you remember what it's like when we were young? Well, yes, I do, John said, but that's not the point. And that's when, by surprise, both of the Montgomery brothers just saw Video taking videos of Clash and the Misfits. So when Buzz went up to his daughter Clash, also Video's cousin, and that's when Buzz suggested to his niece Video, and of course Clash's cousin, to say, how about if you take a picture with me while you're at it? And so that's what Video did. So when Video was done, she says, I think I'm finished for the day. Then she heads off. And that's when Clash, who mocked the Video by asking this question, what's the matter? Are you afraid of being competed with other bands or something? And that's when Video's father John shows up to apologize. It's not your fault, Video tells her father John. The Video told her father how she hated her cousin for taking advantage of other people's lives. Then the same female that just got Possess's autograph earlier says, I like you anyway, even if you don't know Jim that much. But you didn't have to lie about it. Well, that did it. That made Video upset and says, I do so know Jim, and I'm going to prove it to you once and for all. So she tells everybody, listen up. I have an announcement to make and some good news. Jim will be coming to the banquet later. And even better, she's going to give my father John a present right here. So everybody cheered. When Pizzazz heard about Video's announcement, she says, oh no, and I was beginning to like this place. So back with the Holograms who had just left the mansion earlier, they have finally arrived at Christie's stables. It's an old horse farm. So by the time that the Holograms had arrived at Christie's stables, Kimber says, what are we doing here? And that's when, I'm not sure it was Shayna who said it, but she told Kimber, well, you said you needed inspiration. Well, I'm not happy about it, Kimber said. I don't want to be here in the first place. I want to go home. So Asha told Kimber, oh, come on, stop being so childish. And so everybody got out of the car, and that's when they met up with Christy, the owner of the horse farm. So Christy comes out and greeted the Benton sisters and says, it's been a long time. You want me to settle up Lucky? Now, Lucky is the name of the horse that Kimber and her sister's late father used to have, and he's still alive. So Kimber went ahead and greeted Lucky the horse. Now, Lucky's the one with the horseshoe on his head. And so later on, all five women went horse riding together until finally, when Lucky the horse stopped to have a drink of water, that's when Jericho was asking Kimber how she felt about it. Is she having any fun? So Kimber says, ah, it was okay. Oh, come on, Kimber. It was fine, okay? Kimber said. So Aja has her turn to ask Kimber a question. Is she's being inspired yet? So Kimber, in angered response, just told Aja to quote, get off her case. So now it's Kimber's sister, Jerga's turn to ask a question. What's with you anyway? I thought coming here would help you a lot. So Jerga reminds Kimber, we have a banquet later on, and if we don't come up with a song soon, that video will be very disappointed, and worst of all, her father, John, will be disappointed too. Well, I got my own issues to deal with, Kimber said. Stop acting like a child, Jerka says. So what about it? Kimber said in response. Come on, Kimber, Jerka said, and she started remembering how she, Jerka, and Kimber, her sister, used to have with all the good times that they had when their father was alive. Well, that made Kimber upset and says, that's enough. I don't want to hear any more about it. And so Kimber went off with Lucky the horse. When Kimber's friends, including her sister, tried to stop Kimber, she was unsuccessful, and so, in response, Lucky the horse just threw Kimber off of her, and then Kimber just landed on the ground. And by the time the Holograms found her, they were in shock. Now they're left to wonder if Kimber's going to be all right. Then minutes later, Harvey Gabor, who saw what had happened, and he's with a friend of his who also saw what had happened. So Harvey was the first to arrive on the scene, and that's when he told the girls, we had to take her to Doc Martin's right away. It's not that far away from the ranch. And so that's what the girls did. So meanwhile, at John Montgomery's house in Mulberry, Florida, that's when Video decides to call her best friend Jim. But instead, Mrs. Bailey, the housekeeper at Starlight Mansion, who answered Video's phone call, she told her that Jim's not available and that Jerica and the girls had already left Christie's stables at the moment. So Video thanked Mrs. Bailey, the housekeeper at Starlight Mansion, and she ends the phone call. So meanwhile, back with Kimber, she woke up at Doc Martin's house. And she's not alone because her sister and her friends are with her, and so is Harvey Gabor. So Dr. Martin, who was with Kimber, just told Kimber's sister the good news that Kimber's going to be fine. So Kimber, who had no idea where she is, because remember she had earlier got thrown off the horse, so she asked her sister. And so Jerka says, well, you're in the ranch house with Dr. Martin. So Dr. Martin made no mission with Kimber and says, we're just glad that Harvey found you when he did. So Kimber remembers Harvey very well, and she asked Mr. Gabor, Harvey, a question. She says, Harvey? You're Pizzazz, aka Phyllis's father? So Harvey confessed to Kimber that yes, he is. So Shayna made a snide remark to Mr. Gabor, Phyllis, aka Pizzazz's father, and says, yeah, your daughter, Pizzazz, aka Phyllis. Why, she's been a thorn in our sides ever since. So the first thing that Harvey did was to apologize, and he was willing to pay for any damages that may come across. But Jerga told Harvey that it isn't necessary. Then Jerga told Harvey that it wasn't his fault. On the contrary, Harvey confessed, well, it's partially my fault, and then he explains why, because Kimber and Jerga were not the only ones who lost a parent, because Harvey said in his case that Pizzazz, aka Phyllis, has lost a parent too once upon a time. It's when at the time she lost her mother when she was very young. Pizzazz, that is. And of course, ever since then, Harvey has been indulging Phyllis, aka Pizzazz. And of course, in Mr. Gabor, Harvey's case, that Pizzazz has been spoiled to the core, rotten to say the least. Then Harvey also confessed to the Benton sisters that ever since Phyllis, aka Pizzazz's mother, left, he's been doing his best to raise her on his own. So it's very difficult. And now, according to what Harvey also said, that Possesses has been out of control and she has the grudge against the world. So now Kimber realized that what Harvey told Kimber was true. So Kimber sobbed in tears because the reality had become too much for her. And so she cried, and so did her sister. So she now has her inspiration back and then told her sister, I'm ready to write a song now. So both of the Benton sisters had resolved their differences. Well, good news for Kimber now that she's finished writing the song for John, who's Video's father. And she told everyone the good news that she's now finished writing it. But now here comes the bad news. Jerica just told her sister, I'm afraid we'll never make it to Mulberry in time. It's too late. And Rhea explains why, because she said that there are no planes available that can take them to Mulberry in Florida. It's hopeless. But then Harvey speaks up and says, excuse me, ladies, but maybe I can help with that. So Harvey went ahead and used the phone in the other room to call his associate named Hugh, who works at the aviation office. So as Harvey was talking on the phone, that's when Rhea told Jerga, no wonder he cares about his daughter so much, because all he can think about is business. So at the aviation office, Hugh, who's the associate of Harvey's, agrees to get a private plane for Harvey and to get everybody to Mulberry, Florida right away. So speaking of which, meanwhile in Mulberry, Florida, as you can see, everyone was getting ready for a banquet that's coming up later. So when Clash looked at Video, who shows up minutes later along with Video's father John and also Clash's uncle, and of course Video's mother, who's also Clash's aunt, and that's when Clash says, Hey Video, where are your friends? Are they supposed to be coming or what? Well, Video just hesitated for a minute. Now the citizens of Mulberry are getting agitated and upset, and then one of them stepped forward to Video and says, When you promised me that Jim and the Holograms will arrive, I had to cancel my schedule because of you. Then he says, Oh, that's just great. Without a band, this banquet is ruined. Now Video, ashamed with regret, and says, But it wasn't my fault, honest. Then Buzz looked at his daughter and says, You've got a band, right? So when Buzz made a suggestion to his daughter to accidentally let slip to say, Why don't you and your friends the Misfits play in this banquet? Now Pizzazz and Roxy are asking Clash, You got the other band? What other Misfits? What are you talking about? And then Jenna asks Clash a question. What did you tell your father? Why are you telling him this for? And then Clash hesitated. Well, Buzz explains, what my daughter means is that she said that she wants to play with you and your friends. I mean, after all, Buzz says, Clash is a misfit after all. Really? A misfit? Pizzazz asked. And then she and her bandmates started laughing at Clash and humiliating her. And so Clash asked the question, Can't I just become one? Or can you make me one in your case? Well, you just don't become one, possesses. So either you're born a misfit or you're not. Then, long story short, the citizens of Mulberry just heard a plane flying by. It's Harvey's plane. And so they all went outside to see what happened. And so they saw Harvey's plane touch down in front of the barn. And their possessed saw it. Harvey's plane, which is of course her father's, and of course Jim and the Holograms, who comes out of the plane. And with Harvey is Kimber of the Holograms. Pizzazz of the Misfits just couldn't believe it. Kimber, and with her own father. When Kimber looked at Harvey, she says, Uh-oh, here comes Pizzazz. And then Shayna of the Holograms told Harvey, You have to talk to her, please. Maybe it's not so hopeless after all. So Pizzazz and Rage just asked her father a question. How could you do this to me? And on Father's Day, you siding with Kimber of the Holograms. Then Pizzazz started pleading the case with her father to say how he never spends time with her and that she has been turned against and etc. And then he was asked by her, How could you side with the Holograms like this? I don't have to justify myself to you, Harvey says. Well then don't, Pizzazz says, and she walked off in a huff and enraged. And that's when Harvey says, Oh, it's hopeless. And he held his head in shame and regret. So what Harvey said to himself in his case is says, She's impossible. She'll never change. As for Jim and the Holograms, the concert at the banquet went as planned, with her telling everyone that this song is for John Montgomery, Video's father, who's also Clash's uncle. But better than that, that song's not just for John, but also everyone's fathers, including Buzz, who's Clash's father, and John's brother, and also Video's uncle. And let's not forget Pizzazz's father, Harvey, who helped out Kimber on the way. And so the Holograms' song Always in My Heart begins to play. And that's when Kimber's flashbacks go into play. When the Benton sisters were growing up, by the time that when their father was still alive. And now with their father gone, they now have each other. And as you may have guessed it, when the song came to an end, the audience cheered. John Montgomery was very happy. He's not only proud of what Kimber wrote, but so were everyone's fathers, including Harvey Gabor. And so that ends episode 7.